this computer. All right, so good afternoon to all of you. We continue the Athena for Peace Talks, the second season of the second round of this initiative that we aim to show or to identify how international networks can help scholars to overcome difficult situations, or how we can promote peace education for a more sustainable future and for more collaboration within and beyond our continent. So it's a great pleasure to welcome Larisa, Professor Larisa Kasumagić Kafedžić from the University of Sarajevo in Bosnia and Herzegovina. Few words about our today's speaker. She's an associate professor in the University of Sarajevo. In the period 2003-2004, she was a Cornell University Humphrey Fellow alumni. 2022-23, she was a Fulbright visiting fellow at Cornell, teaching the course on global citizenship, education, and work on her research that is very much related on the purposes of this series of talks: teachers as agents of change, education for peace and social responsibility. And this also reflects what we would like to do through the Impact Project, to bring in communication anyone, beyond any conflicts and beyond any political barriers, because this is the role of the universities, to make people at least to agree on what do they disagree, at least this. So she has more than 25 years of experience in peaceful actions, development programs, and intercultural pedagogy in language education. And also, and I hope that she's going to share these links, she's a founder of Peace Education Hub, that I think particularly for the Impact Project and what we would like to do in the future through Impact and beyond, I think that this is a very good example on what we would like to deliver. So I would like to welcome you, Larisa. The Bosnia case is going to be presented through your experience. And thank you very much again for your contribution and your availability. Thank you.
Great. Thank you so much, dear Kostas, for the invitation. We met some months ago in Germany, I remember, when we had this panel. And this was, I think, the initial conversation when we were starting brainstorming and thinking about possible connections. And I know it didn't work for some time. We had to postpone these meetings all over again. So I'm really glad that I could finally also make it for the presentation, and also that we could find the time that suited everyone. So thanks again for the invitation, and kind regards and greetings to everyone who joined the webinar this afternoon from Sarajevo, from Bosnia and Herzegovina. I represent today my university, which is the University of Sarajevo, the Faculty of Philosophy, the Department of Teacher Education within English language teaching, because this is my primary affiliation. But I also represent today our Peace Education Hub, which is the Center for Peace, Pedagogy and Peace Learning, which I will mention, Kostas, you're absolutely right. I will also make connections to the center, and I will speak briefly about the history of that center and also about the programs and the visions that we have established for the work of our initiative. So this is just to give you visually also the connection to the place I come from. I'm not sure whether you have made any trips to Bosnia. What is the connection to the place of Sarajevo and to Bosnia and Herzegovina? But I chose these images just to sort of give you a sense of diversity, of cultural, religious, ethnic diversity that is represented in the history, but also in the culture and social background of the whole of Bosnia and Herzegovina. I would also like to briefly just mention, this is usually what I make in the beginning of my lectures in connection to this topic, just to give you a little bit of my background, which is related to some of my early experiences. Kostas mentioned that I've had around 25 years of experience. Basically, I've had 30 years of experience, if we really count the years when I actually started the work in peace and in nonviolence. And my initial work in this field was actually in trauma work with families and children. who were forcibly displaced in the 90s in Bosnia and Herzegovina as a result of the breakup of Yugoslavia. I was a teenager in 1992, fresh from high school. So this was my early start in connection to the work with children and their families, which is why I chose this image here of the homes. We used a lot of artwork in our psychosocial support for war traumatized children in the early beginnings of the work that I did as a young teenager. And I was also in my early professional work, I was also very much involved in the work of Facing History and Ourselves organization, which is a foundation that deals with a lot of educational activities and practices that revolve around citizenship education and history teaching, and actually presenting the sensitivity and the contested nature and also the elements of citizenship and peace learning and teaching through the case example, through the case study of Holocaust, but also through other examples of the atrocities from around the world. So in my early education, I was involved with the work of Facing History, and a lot of programs and a lot of initiatives and other activities have actually deeply defined and framed a lot of my understanding around the issues of peace learning as a very young teacher, but also as a young professional. And lastly, also the connection to the whole field of nonviolent communication, which I was exposed to again as a very young teacher, so 25 years ago, through the work of humanistic psychology and the legacy of Marshall Rosenberg, who actually established this whole field of nonviolent communication, which we were developing as part of a local NGO that I belonged to for almost a decade in my early professional life. So this was the connection to language, which you will see later on also translated to the work that I do at the moment at the university, when I was really as a very young professional, was becoming very much aware of the importance and the relevance of the role of language in the promotion of peace, and also in the way we can use language as a tool to resolve or to negotiate issues, challenges, and to resolve conflicts. So this is my positionality as an educator, with some of my early experiences from the war and the post-war that really defined my commitment and my motivation to peace and nonviolence in the educational work that I do also at the moment. I'm not sure to what extent some of you or all of you are familiar with the situation in Bosnia. So I'm not going to go too much into many details, but I wanted to present the framework of educational system in Bosnia and Herzegovina, just to give you sort of a better understanding of the reasons why peace education is critical in the context of Bosnia and Herzegovina, and also why peace education still poses a challenge in terms of institutionalizing these frameworks, especially in the formal educational settings and in teacher training, which is the vision of our work at the university. So this is the educational system 30 years after the war, still very complex and contradictory, and within the international literature, this educational framework is considered as very complicated. This is just the image usually used to present a very complex educational structure, which is a direct translation of the legacy of the war and the segregation and the divisions, the dissonance within the educational system of Bosnia and Herzegovina, where you see lots of these sort of levels of influence, lots of these administrative frameworks with so many of the cantons, different ministries of education. So we are a very small country with 3.6 million people. This is the population of Bosnia. So we are very small in terms of population, but also geographically. But if you look at this image, you see 10 cantons, so 10 cantonal ministries of education. And then you see ministries of education at the level of the Federation, at the level of Republika Srpska, and at the level of independent district Brčko. So you see all these sorts of different administrative barriers in order to sort of integrate or institutionalize something at the state level, which we would like to see happening in the schools and in teacher education program But the image that I'm sharing with you is really a very direct and explicit consequence of political and social fragmentation in Bosnia and Herzegovina, which is still the result of the effects and the consequences of the war. When it comes to the content of the curriculum, this is also very important to be observed. We are still discussing and we are still facing, even though this is not sort of in the explicit arena of the narratives of the administration, of the political, I would say, of those who are in charge of proposing policies and who are actually creating the curricula. But a lot of research of those who actually study Bosnian educational system from the scientific perspective and as a practitioner or as those who are really education experts, they see that the curricula in Bosnia and Herzegovina still creates something that is a self-reinforcing recipe for deep divisions, very strong fragmentation, that is still putting lots of barriers in the daily practices of teaching and learning in schools and in educational programs. So the fragmentation of the system is still grounded in a commitment to maintain politically, to maintain the narrative of one party, of ethno-national party, of ethno-national group interests. And as I mentioned in the beginning, we do have these three main groups of people, ethnic groups of people living in Bosnia. Bosnian Muslims who are Bosniaks, and this is the majority. Bosnian Croats, and this makes almost 1/3 of the population. And we also have Bosnian Serbs. So and again, as I said, the legacy of the conflict in the 90s has created a situation where we basically have three separate curricula that is very much informed by these ethno-national group interests. When it comes to pedagogy, we do have the system that still largely relies on very traditional principles in learning, which is related to rote memorization, teaching from the textbook, lots of memorization of the facts and information that does not foster, unfortunately, analytical thinking skills, critical media literacy, and global citizenship. And lots of research also supports this sort of statement, not just in Bosnia, but also some of the international, like PISA international research that actually has confirmed very low skills and very low sort of performance of functional knowledge of the students in Bosnian primary and secondary education. What is of the utmost concern for people who are in education field like myself is that the textbooks, through the content, through the positionality of teachers, through the explicit and implicit sort of values that teachers transmit in the classroom, and sometimes through the hidden curriculum that teachers implement as part of the educational teaching and learning, there's so much that still revolves around the ethnification that promotes this narrative of us versus them, or what happened, who started the war, what is the post-war situation, that actually, if we really look at the levels of the social reconciliation, Bosnia and Herzegovina has experienced very little genuine political or social reconciliation when it comes to understanding the processes of the healing and reconciliation even 30 years after the war. And also when it comes to religious introduction and religious education, this was introduced to Bosnian educational system soon after the war. So a lot of that curricula has focused on doctrinal religious instruction rather than on non-denominational approaches to education, inclusive approaches to education that would actually promote this intercultural or peaceful reconciliation and healing even this many years post the conflict. And of course that there have been a lot of international efforts to support the reforms in Bosnia and Herzegovina that have failed to address the root causes of the problems throughout the curricula and throughout the educational system, particularly in the national identity formation subjects And these are the subjects which are related to mother language, history, geography, even religious education. So lots of these initiatives have been taking place in Bosnia, but the system, the formal educational system, the ministries of education, the educational policymakers, those who propose the reforms, really fail to get into the depth or into the heart, into the core of the educational problems and issues that still divide the educational system. When it comes to history, which is the most contested subject in the curriculum of Bosnia and Herzegovina, what we can see from the research done in 2007, but also in 2017, 10 years later, there was a research entitled, What Do We Teach Our Children in Bosnia and Herzegovina? What has been shown without too much of a difference in these two comparative approaches with 10 years in between was that the way the history was taught in Bosnia and Herzegovina is very much based or very much goes in the direction of these kinds of topics and contents where war was seen as an integral part of life, where the consequences of war and peace agreements are discussed from the perspective of the state, from the perspective of political system, and not rarely are they discussed from the perspective of individuals. And only 14% of analyzed textbooks developed an open and flexible attitude toward your own group and those outside of it, as well as any sort of challenging, deeply rooted stereotypes is rarely discussed. And it's rarely discussed and addressed through education for the reasons that I already mentioned, because structurally and organizationally, and also in terms of the political structure of the state, this is almost impossible, or it becomes it poses a lot of challenges for teachers. But it's also because teachers are inadequately prepared and supported through formal education, but also through professional development of teachers to have the skills and knowledge and competencies to address some of these very sensitive issues. And when it comes to peace in the curriculum, relatively little research has been done and made on how peace resources circulate among teachers, among educators, among teacher educators. What is the role of leadership in schools, in educational environment, in terms of creating peaceful context, peaceful schools, and what impacts of these peace education programs on school participants, on school members are actually made as a whole, which is another reason why the creation and the development of our Peace Education Hub was particularly important in connection to some of these elements that I presented here. Lastly, one of the challenges before I move to some of the results and some of the programs that we have initiated in Bosnia, in our university, this is really one of the challenges that I think is faced globally. And we are also seeing a lot of these challenges and obstacles within Bosnia that humanities have been largely marginalized, but also the interest for humanities, but not just humanities, including in social sciences and social studies, has significantly dropped, and students are more and more sort of oriented towards STEM sciences, towards other information technology fields, and we are experiencing a drastic drop in interest. I could say a disinterest in some of the humanities, but also in the teaching profession. So we are faced with some of these challenges at the moment to motivate teachers and to motivate students, to motivate teachers to remain committed to teaching profession and to tackle some of these sensitive issues in the classrooms, but also to motivate students to join and to enroll in teacher education program. So all of this taken into consideration, what we were seeing in Bosnia in the 90s, during and right after the war, were the elements of direct violence. When we experienced the war as a society, when our educational system also went through drastic changes, and when the whole society experienced something that was a massive social trauma as a result of the direct violence in the 90s. Fortunately, we don't have the level and the scope of the brutality of direct violence as sort of featured during the war and through the immediate consequences in the period right after the war. But what we are also seeing in the society, even 30 years after the war, are the elements of cultural violence and also the elements of structural violence. So there's so much in terms of normalization of something that is becoming cultural violence and structural violence that is largely neglected and sort of marginalized through education. And this is also at the focus and at the heart of our interest in terms of trying to integrate some of these elements into our educational system. So what led our group of people here at the university to initiate something that became our Center for Peace Education within the university is also related to our attempts to understand what happens in conflict, because most of us live as teachers now, as experienced teachers now, doing professional work, doing the work in teacher training from a different position within the formal educational setting. As those who experience conflict, we really try to understand what happens in conflict. And this keeps a very important place within the frameworks of peace education. But what we also realized, and this was also discussed in some of the research publications, which I particularly like, that conflict cannot be understood if we only focus on people's potential, on human potential to do evil, to be aggressive, to be violent, which is something that we are still experiencing, as I said, through structural and cultural violence in our society and also in the region. And we cannot understand these elements only by searching for understanding of conflict in human innate competitiveness, in the way historical traumas, for example, Vamik Volkan spoke a lot about the transmission or the chosen social traumas, historical traumas that also define the way we try to understand how certain conflicts occur or develop or are transmitted from one generation to the next, or through the ancient grievances, disparities, etc. What becomes really important for peace education and what we put as one of the main tasks for our center is really that we are grappling and trying to understand what are the motivations, what are the practices, what are the visions and ideas of those people and those teachers and those teacher educators or groups of people who decide to act for peace despite the dangerous circumstances and environments, and also despite the risk that is posed to themselves. So these are some of the elements that we want to discuss and understand better within our educational initiatives. So what is the position of peace education of today? When we look at the international practices, what we can agree upon is that this has become, and this has been, an international ideal for more than 50 years. And we know that the emergence of these initiatives have particularly been present in different communities and societies right after the Second World War. But we are also seeing the resurgence of interest, I would say, with a lot of changes globally that we are seeing, unfortunately, as a result of the resurgence of violence and conflicts around the world. What is also agreed upon within the international frameworks that peace education today requires certain levels of knowledge, values, attitudes, skills, dispositions that we need to integrate as part of pedagogies and as part of curricula content. What is also generally agreed on that negative peace is insufficient. So absence of physical violence, of physical destruction, of something that is a physically violent behavior is insufficient for developing and sustaining the well-being of communities and societies, and in that sense also educational environments, which is why positive peace, which is the foundation for the sustainable societal well-being, is really crucial. What is also less agreed upon that the importance of inner peace is also important, which is why when we work with teachers, we do challenge teachers to work a lot on their own system of values and understand the effects of traumas, for example, especially in the context of Bosnia, on their own attitudes, their own reactivity sometimes, but also the sensitivity of certain topics. It's also very complex and sensitive as a field, especially in the context of mass violence and human rights abuses. So peace education would not be the same in Bosnia 30 years ago when we were in the midst of conflict, or 30 years after the war when we are dealing with the consequences of conflict, or when we are trying to do some preventive work in order to prevent the escalation or the outbreak of new conflicts or new situations that could potentially explode in undesirable direction. Different contexts and pedagogical aims influence the choices on methods and approaches. So this is really important. So there's no one model that could be copy-pasted in other environments and communities. So we need to really understand the context where we want to frame peace education. And it requires a lot of self-reflection, conscientization, and praxis, to use Paulo Freire's terms. And it has to be understood in the context of intergenerational and societal healing. So this is another very important challenge for the Bosnian society, because this issue has been largely marginalized for a long period of time. Interwoven, peace education is interwoven with larger contexts, with wider social, economic, political processes. So it can be seen in isolation from the rest of the community and society. And it's therefore necessarily interdisciplinary, which poses also a challenge. I would be curious to hear other experiences from your universities, but this is also a challenge for us, because we still see very traditional silos for certain disciplines. And sometimes there's a lack of open-mindedness or a lack of readiness to collaborate with other disciplines, because in order to pave the way and to lay the foundation for the field of peace education within the traditional hierarchies of disciplines and institutions, which is at the heart and in its very nature, very much interdisciplinary. This requires also lots of sort of readiness to leave your comfort zone, to collaborate with other disciplines and other scientists and practitioners. So this is still a very big challenge for us. And when it comes to this field of peace education, I spoke about that from the international perspective. So just as something that is generally agreed upon, when it comes to content or what is taught through peace education, you can see here various sort of models of that overlap with the values and goals and learning outcomes of peace education, which we also, my dear colleague who Konstantinos also met in Germany, Sarah Clark Habibi, and who I think was also one of the speakers in your series of these lectures. Sarah and I, we co-edited a book on peace pedagogy, which I am happy to share with you at the very end, if some of you are interested in learning more about these practices. But this is what we also pull together as a sort of framework to represent something that is within the international literature present in terms of different thematic areas and focuses in connection to peace education. So you see different models of topics that are discussed or integrated in different ways or with different approaches. And when it comes to peace pedagogy as a particular approach in terms of how some of these topics are discussed or analyzed or approached within the formal education, we also made an overview of different pedagogies. This is the name of our book that we co-edited, Peace Pedagogies in Bosnia and Herzegovina, where we also in detail discuss the pedagogical principles and pedagogies in terms of how we teach certain issues and certain topics when it comes to peace education, which we are trying to integrate and which we are trying to develop also in the context of Bosnia. So you can see here from intercultural pedagogy, nonviolence pedagogy, democratic, arts-based. For example, in the book, we discuss drama-based pedagogy as a very particular, unique approach in integrating this pedagogical philosophy in terms of including students. The example in the book is from English language education, where the teacher actually develops some of these sensitive topics through the use of drama-based pedagogy in peace learning. And you see also other principles this is, again, as I said, the synthesis of international literature that has been widely established and has been widely discussed in connection to pedagogical principles in peace education. And what all of these that I have mentioned has led us at the university, I could say 8 years ago, so this was 2018, 7 years ago, we started the project together with the colleagues from Rwanda, colleagues from UK and Colombia. The project was initiated by the University of Sussex. It was 2017 to 18 when the University of Sussex and their senior researcher, Juliet Millikan, actually did a book project on the role of universities in peace building. And she invited some of our colleagues. I was one of the co-investigators in the project entitled Peace Building Pedagogies in Higher Education. And we did this big international research project with the goal to discuss and reflect on how peace pedagogies, so it's very similar to what you're trying to do through this initiative with Peace Talks, the way I understand your project. We did this international project with the goal in mind that we wanted to reflect on how we might develop a culture of peace building within the universities with our students and through educational initiatives and through collaborative research in peace building pedagogies. So we did this research project for 2 years. We worked with students, we worked with teachers, we also did some literature review, and the final outcome, we also published this research paper, Pedagogies for Peace Building in Higher Education, how and why should higher education institutions get involved in teaching for peace. So it's an open source paper, you can check it. It really represents, like, theoretically, philosophically, pedagogically, the reasons and arguments for why this becomes very important in the world we live in today. But also we gave some examples from each of the contexts, of the international context, which I mentioned. But what was the main outcome of this research was actually the establishment of our Peace Hub, which Kostas mentioned in the beginning, which is, here is the link to our center, peacehub.ba. So if you can check the work of our hub online. We try to archive and really document all activities and projects we do as part of this Center for Peace Education. It's a bilingual website, but also with options to check it in other languages. But it was really important for us. We've been around for 6 years now, almost 6 years, including in this part of the project. And we managed to institutionally integrate our Peace Hub within the university. So now the Center for Peace Education is institutionally embedded in our program for research and teaching, which is like a big umbrella center with different centers. We have centers for languages, for Bosnian language. We have the Center for Research in Psychology. I mean, we have different really orientations, but the establishment of Peace Education Hub for the first time of this nature and this scope was really important for us. It took us a while when we actually eventually got the support and commitment by the management and administration who supported the work of our center. The work of the center is also very much based on some of the principles which we developed as part of this research, which I mentioned on the role of peace building pedagogies in higher education, but also on some other research results from other international scholars, where we actually put at the heart of the center the role that universities play in peace building, from institutional conflict analysis and peace planning vision that we have established for the center, also with some of the goals to develop research for conflict transformation, for peace building through teacher training. This is our primary focus, because as part of the political science in the University of Sarajevo, we do have peace studies, but it's more the focus with a greater focus on political and sociological perspectives of peace, while in our Peace Education Hub, we put greater emphasis on education of teachers and pedagogical principles of peace. So really, this is like the main framework. But also what we put as the goal is dialogue and training, capacity building, post-conflict scenario planning. These are some of the elements that we keep in mind in our vision and in our sort of policy strategy development. But we also started very small. We started with small projects. You can see in our website some of the... there was some interference with the sound. Okay, so we included students. For example, this was one of the first projects we did. We included students with visual images to initiate the discussion around conflict and peace. We did presentations of these and critical reflections and workshops. We also integrated through our Peace Hub another project that is really very important in peace education in Bosnia, a collaboration that we established that has been going on since 1997. So soon we will celebrate the 30th anniversary of this project. So we did this peace project even before we had the Center for Peace Education. We've had it for almost, as I said, 27 years now. But this was the project we established first in a different town in Bosnia. I started this project as a student at the time. But when I moved to the university, I put this project through the university to involve my students in teacher training who did a lot of community work with schools and with students from William and Mary to develop the curriculum for peace and nonviolence, environment and ecology, culture and tolerance and diversity with some of the pedagogical principles which you can see on the bottom line of the slide, and with lots of elements that are also integral to training of teachers in connection to action research, in connection to critical reflection, pedagogies of drama-based principles, children's literature and film in education, arts integrated principles. So these are all of the elements. You can also learn a little bit more on our website about this specific project. And of course, we integrated research as a very important integral element in that work. So these are just some elements from the work from one community center when we do this particular project each summer. We're having the project again this summer. This is the 27th year we've had it. And I would also like, in terms of how we do some of the peace education through the center, but also through the teacher training program, we use a lot of young adult and children's literature. So we recognize, because I do work with teachers who are future teachers of English language, literature, and culture, we recognize the potential of using children's books and children's literature and young adult literature. So we try to establish the connections, like this one was a connection we have established with another university, Longwood University in the United States, in Virginia. And we try to develop reflection groups after reading the book, connections with students, critical points on certain topics that relate to peace and diversity and the fear of the unknown. And then we translated some of these principles. For example, this book was done as part of my curriculum in teacher training, but it was then also integrated in the ABC project, which we do as a community project with students 10 to 15, because this is a young adult literature book. And we also I'm trying to get gradually towards the end of my presentation. We also try to continuously build the repository. This is something that we will do more intensively for the website, to build a repository of important resources that could be used not just in language education. On this slide, you can see a very big focus on peace building and language learning, because this is my primary field. And this is where I started actually to develop. This was my angle of looking at peace education from the perspective of linguistics and applied linguistics and teacher development, and recognizing the role of teachers. Kostas mentioned in the beginning, teachers as peacemakers was also my project as part of the Fulbright research. So this was really the direction that I've been following in my professional work. But we also try to open up through the Center for Peace Education and really present other resources that are available. We want to build them into a repository that could be used for teachers here in Bosnia of different subjects. So not just English teachers, but history teachers, geography teachers, religious education teachers, but also other natural sciences, STEM disciplines, where teachers would be invited actually to connect their subject areas to the philosophy and principles of peace learning. And what is really important in our approach, and we previously invited Professor Judy Pace from the University of San Francisco. She's also a member, she's a great supporter also of our Peace Hub. She gave several webinars in our center. And last year, Kostas, she came as a researcher, Fulbright researcher, as an American fellow to Bosnia, and we collaborated. We did co-teaching and we co-designed a module on teaching controversial issues. So this was a module we developed as part of my course on interculturalism and peace pedagogy and language teaching. So Professor Pace and I, we co-designed and co-developed this whole module that we presented to our students, and that has been carried on in the current semester as well, where we actually try to train student teachers on how to embed and how to become more sensitive and how to become more adequately prepared to understand the complexities of sensitive issues in the classroom. But also, if you look at this framework, we went through each of these elements in terms of preparation, in terms of understanding their teacher's stance, but also their pedagogical preparation and the selection of the authentic materials, pedagogies, etc., in order to develop something that is the educational framework. Okay, this is my, these are some of my final 2 slides. I would like to conclude the lecture, today's presentation, with some of the recommendations that were made as part of the UNESCO series of regional expert consultations on intercultural competence and peace building. I attended some of these sessions. This was done in 2023. So you can see here, I highlighted some of these recommendations. Some of these recommendations that were made for the context of Europe in order to make this in different spheres of nations. Peace Hub was really to develop tech sensitivity, the knowledge of the local culture. We've done that like throughout our professional engagement and our professional work at the university. But what was really important, we exchanges through our student exchange work. This is something we also want to break the vicious circles of inherited narratives and stereotypes that are, as I said, sometimes internalized or not challenged as part of teaching and learning. And we also want to develop trauma sensitivity and responsiveness to address the legacies of traumas that are carried out in societies. So I will tell you in the end what is our main project at the moment. But this trauma responsiveness is also a very important awareness that we are now trying to develop and integrate into our model of peace education. We are still sort of in the beginning of this process. And introducing into early childhood through adolescence has been the work we've done at the heart of our orientation. And the important lessons for the present and the future work of our Peace Hub is that what we realized was really that some of the old patterns and old models of peace education that were done like in the period right after the war are currently inadequate. So we want to rethink and reinvent new models of peace education in our Peace Hub. We also recognize, and this is one of the leading principles everyone understands in our Peace Hub, that education is never neutral, because a lot of these sorts of recommendations in education would put recommendation in terms of excluding politics from education. But we also argue that if we neglect the role of education in peace building, it can just generate, or it can deepen the conflict and deepen the fragmentation and divisiveness in society. So there has to be a more proactive approach to peace building that can increase resilience of society, provide valuable opportunities for teachers, and institutionalize peace education in teacher training. And what we also, I hope, realize, even though we are a small group of teachers, that peace is the responsibility of everyone in the educational community, and that the truly sustainable peace comes about when someone in the system can imagine a different way to sort of break the continuity and to sort of imagine, to envision a different way of doing things or a different way of resolving things. And this responsibility this is a huge problem in Bosnia. We always expect someone else to resolve issues for us. So we always see that responsibility lies in the government, in the external sort of infrastructures, external forces. What we are trying also to teach students and to teach also to promote and advocate through the center is that it's also internal. We are all responsible for the imperative to promote the imperative of peace learning. And for our discussion, I will leave this slide, which is our current state of being in our Peace Hub, where we are actually, this is really good news to share with you that we just recently signed the agreement with the UNESCO Center for Peace Building here in Bosnia, who are supporting the development of our peace education curriculum, which we will move in the direction of in the next 2 years, with the with a sort of long-term goal. I put here UNESCO Chair in Peace Education and Intercultural Learning, which is our long-term vision for our Peace Hub, where we recognize that each discipline can contribute to peace. So we really want to develop the framework for different levels of education, including in pre-primary, primary, secondary, and higher education, where we want to propose a framework of different modules, principles, competencies for teachers and students, which will serve as the foundation for professional development of teachers and also for teacher training in universities. And we are still in the beginning of that as well, but I think we also have done some work now, which could be a very good foundation to move in the direction of even more institutionalizing peace education through teacher training and through having, as I said here, we put here as a long-term, we really want to have the chair in intercultural learning and peace education. So this is our long-term goal for the university. And I will stop here. I know that we started a little bit beyond 5, so I might have gone a little bit over the time, but we still have a little bit of time for a discussion. Thank you so much for your attention.
Thank you very much, Larisa. Very informative, very constructive presentation with a great vision. Now it's time for questions. Please stop sharing your screen.
Yes, yes.
We are going to appreciate. Can you share with us this presentation?
Of course, I will.
Excellent.
I will send you by email this presentation.
All right.
So you
excellent.
can share with the participants.
Yes, of course. I'm going to upload it to the website that we have for this kind of initiative. So now time is for questions. I have some questions, to be honest. First of all, my first question is like, however, all this kind of effort, what are the main barriers for Bosnia Herzegovina as a state do not introduce these 2 ministries of education? Because from the moment that you have 2 ministries of education, that they are very much focused to the religion, let's say, groups, then you are doing nothing. Almost the impact is you diminish the impact of your excellent work. So what are the main barriers? Why the 2, let's say, I suspect you have one government, Bosnia Herzegovina is like, on my mind, one state.
Yes,
so
we have one government.
What do they say to you? What are the main barriers? Why they don't try to make the things, more unified?
I think we do have one government, but we have 3 presidents. I don't know if you knew that.
No, no, I didn't know that.
So we have 3 presidents, and I think we are very unique as a society. This is opposed for, again, the representative of each of the ethnic groups with its sort of, nominated member. So this is also very absurd situation, and you can imagine the time and the bureaucracy and the administrative sort of slowness of certain policies to be put in place. So going back to your question, what is the main barrier? I think the most contested nature is history. So there's a lack of agreement on how to teach history of the war in the 90s. This is the most contested piece around which our society has not agreed on in terms of how to approach some of these sensitive topics and how to present that in through education. So we have different histories that are taught in educational system. So imagine within such two ministries, the federal and Republika Srpska, but then within the federation, we have other cantons. Each of them has their own, municipality and administrative ministerial also responsibilities. So you can imagine the level of fragmentation and the lack of sort of agreement and consent to move forward, because I think the resolution would be just the other day, the Council of Europe adopted this document. I don't know if you have followed on the importance of multi-perspectivity in history education, that it's really important to embed this as a particular approach to history teaching and history learning in terms of, presenting different perspectives, inviting students to check different sources in order to develop critical thinking and multi-perspectivity for something that is a shared vision of the Bosnian society. I think we lack a unified vision of how we can move forward in the direction that will be beneficial for everyone in the society. And whether the effects of our work are minimized within such a structure, I don't think so, because I believe that we are also building, this is the structure we cannot change at the moment, but we are building the potential of really, building the resilience from inside out, from within, from within the classroom, from within the teacher education programs, or so we want to believe. We've done this work for a long time as individual teachers. We are trying to empower students, teachers in the first place, that through the subjects that they teach, that they can put the lenses of, multi-perspectivity in history education, critical citizenship education, peace learning, so that they can empower their students also to have the necessary skills and tools to be responsible citizens, but also to know how to live in the society that is deeply wounded and deeply fragmented. So I don't know whether this response to your question. It's been a struggle. It's been a struggle for 30 years, as I said.
I mean, this kind, comes to my mind what we are learning as a Greeks, through our history about our relations with the text, for example. So yes. I think it's like more like it contains some truth elements, but to me, reading books outside, from the both sides, I mean, it looks like more like, I would say within. I should be careful within, this kind of marks, propaganda or something like this. So it's something that should change in general. However, Larisa, the most critical thing, I will give you an example. Sadat dared to sign peace agreement and recognize Israel in 1979. He was assassinated. Rabin tried to do the same, assassinated. So what I would like to say to this, or Indira Gandhi with the Hindus, what was there? She was assassinated. So what I would like to say on this is like, if you don't change whatever we are going to do in the universities, and I really like this because I want to attempt something similar, from internal to go external, not from external to internal, where the university is located. However, a student or a professor, after the end of the school or the university, has to go to the church, has to go to the mosque, has to go to the synagogue to meet the other community. So if he's going to dare to say like, look, we are not, dissimilar with them. We have similar things or we can communicate. What is the reaction? It's going to be what happened to all these people. Some fanatics, probably they are going to isolate them. So I think that if the problem with history, if the problem, from the state is not going to really support it, I mean, the work of the university in order really to have an impact on peace education is going to take, I don't know how many years. if it took for Bosnia and Herzegovina, after what has happened, 30 years, and you still have the same history, you know how to teach,
Yes.
your efforts, how many Larisa's career they will request, and how many Larisas they should collaborate. So I would say it's like, as a motivation is an excellent, and this is the solution, but is it some kind of utopia?
Could be. Could be. It could be. Absolutely. But I think this is also integral to our educational work, really to restore hope for our students, because I think societies around the world also face very critical existential fears in the world we live in today. So there could be some elements of utopia, or there could be some elements, I call it restoring hope, because I think it's also integral to our teachers' profession. And to some of the idealism that we still want to restore in the world we live in today. And it's not a romanticized vision of peace, but it's really critical work. It's a very hard work. Yes. So it's not romanticizing, really, like give peace a chance to everyone, or let's just all hold hands and live peacefully. It's really very hard work of digging deeper, of really struggling with lots of obstacles, but it's also role modeling for our students, how some of these challenges could be overcome, how we address them in the classrooms, how we actually have to support our students. Because I train teachers, I work with prospective teachers. This is really very much part of the mission that I see is part of the responsibility that I have as a teacher educator. So this is how I would respond to that.
I will keep one word from what did you say of, you know, all these nice things, like resilience, that we are going to build the resilience of our students and our staff to respond, you know, better or you know, with more openness on what is happening. And before I will move to my next question, there is a question from our colleague from Spain, Maria. Maria, do you want to switch on your microphone and ask the question directed to Larisa?
Yes, of course. Thank you, Kostas. Thank you, Larisa. Very interesting presentation. I was seeing that all those projects were by the view of the STEM planning. Okay, so I would like to know what kind of obstacles have you found out to organize these STEM projects at the university? Okay, and how did you handle them?
So what are the most common obstacles and how we handle them?
Yeah.
In terms of planning, one of the greatest obstacles is to find people who are enthusiastic and committed to this topic. So in that regard, Kostas is really, you are right. So sometimes it's a lonely journey. It's really hard to find people from other disciplines, because this was also as I mentioned in my presentation, it's an interdisciplinary field.
That's it.
So we are really pioneering something that is new within the formal educational system. So it was very challenging to find colleagues at the university who would be supportive, who would dedicate their time, because a lot of times this requires additional time beyond the official, you know, curriculum of teaching and doing research and writing papers, because this involves some of the activism in the community, in going out and looking for projects, in writing projects. So that requires really very strong dedication. So this was one of the greatest challenges. For a long period of time, we faced the obstacles within the administration. Our management just simply didn't see the value or the importance of having this. Was completely new to them. Peace as a term was also contested. Even the very word peace was contested, if you can imagine, because it brought back a lot of these sort of tensions and controversies around, you know, peace agreements, how we live in Bosnia 30 years, 20 years after the war. Or they simply couldn't position the field of peace education, because we've never had it. We don't have it in our sort of, you know, in the list of different disciplines and in the terminology of naming different departments and fields and chairs. So there was a lot of struggle also with the administration. So we were lucky 7 years ago when we had the dean and the vice deans who really recognized the importance of this. But it took us a while. It took us a long time. It didn't come like overnight. So I've been teaching here for more than 20 years now. So it took us quite a while to get the support of. So this is another challenge. And so the perseverance, the dedication, the vision that we had, when we would be rejected, we continued working through our courses on the topics of interculturalism and peace learning. So for example, a colleague in history teacher education, she would do a lot of these principles through history teacher training, and I would do through language education. So we found our ways of doing things, but we always had this vision of framing it institutionally because we really valued, we thought that this was very important in Bosnia that had this history and legacy from the 90s. And another important challenge was also just getting the funding. So, trying to find, because we couldn't be institutionally supported, so we were looking for external support. Mm-hmm. And in the beginning, it was also very difficult to even administer projects because our administration didn't have a lot of experience in terms of, doing project administration, finances. So sometimes in the beginning, we had organizations administering, like the partner organization, Forum ZFD is one of our key partners from the start. It's a German organization. So they would do the administering in the beginning. This year, we signed the agreement with UNESCO, which is a big project, one of the first of such a scope. And we are going through the institution for the first time, through the university institution. So this was also the challenge. We struggled a lot because we have this very slow hierarchical structures within the universities. As I said, with a sort of lack of understanding also of the importance of doing some community work. They can't see the responsibility of universities to do some sort of collaboration with community organizations. So that took a while for people to understand that this is also invaluable for university students as well, because this is part of their practice. It's also important for us to put some knowledge in the community. So that took a while. So this year we are starting with a big UNESCO project. It's one of the biggest for us for the first time. This is the 6th year of our center, and we are doing all administration with our finances and administration of the university. So we'll see. We hope it will go well. But these were some of the main challenges.
Thank you very much. This is very complex. I understand that. And let me congratulate for your perseverance and your resilience. Go ahead.
Thank you. Thanks a lot, Maria.
No.
Thank you.
Thank you.
The floor is now to Noga.
Yes, first of all, Larisa, I want to thank you for a really honest, I think that's a correct word in English, but telling us the truth and not hiding. And it's not easy, especially when we're in a complex area and things are not going smoothly. And second thing, you're talking about 30 years. It's not that long.
That's right as well.
I think you have succeeded to do a lot in these 30 years. It's not that long. So it seems that you're going on the right direction and doing it in the correct way. And really, I applaud you.
Thank you. Thanks so much.
And I don't have a question, just wanted, to share it.
No, I think in terms of the histories and social movements and developments, you're also right. 30 years is not a long time. You're absolutely correct. But we do have some distance now. It's different than in the period right after the war. But it's also important for the vision of our future to have a clearer understanding where we want to move, in which direction. And these are sometimes difficult conversations. But thanks a lot, Noga. Thanks so much.
I agree with Noga. However, we should take into consideration one thing. If it is 30 years, if it's 100 years, it's 400 years, that is now, or 1,000 years, this corresponds to what wrong has happened in the past in order to reach, this point. So if we were able to act faster, the sooner, the impact will be realized.
Yeah.
Thank you, Maria. We're going to close very soon, speak you soon. And the floor is to my colleague Tatiana from the University of Maribor. So we are Balkans, a lot of Balkans here.
Yes, I can see now
Slovenia,
Maribor.
Bosnia.
Yes, Slovenia, great. I didn't realize just now that I saw Athena, but not Maribor. Great.
Yeah. I'm sorry for the others, but I just want to say one sentence in another language. Larisa, zahvalna sam za ovu prezentaciju, bila je odlična, puno se mi sviđala I puno sam se I naučila. And
Hvala puno.
all other colleagues, I was using the common language of former Yugoslavia, through which Larisa and myself, we can understand each other, and that was the common language that was built up from different languages. I don't want to go in details, and maybe I said this too easy in that way, but nevertheless, that was what in the former Yugoslavia as called Serbo-Croatian language, we were able to talk with each other and to learn from each other, also from the culture point of view. And my question is going on this culture point of view, because you mentioned it strongly in many places in the connection with the peace education, with the project, with UNESCO, and so on. And you pointed out also that actually the culture differences, the culture communication has to be learned everywhere and from very beginning. I agree with this completely. I'm coming from electrical engineering, and I believe that also electrical engineers and computer scientists need to have this knowledge about the cross-cultural communication, about the differences, understanding other people, not only from the national point of view, but also from the expert points of view, because engineers are different from those coming from sociology, medicine, or whatever. So
absolutely. No,
finally, the question, sorry.
Yes.
So are you starting now, after all these experiences, with bringing this knowledge already to the kids in the kindergarten, or it's still first coming out somewhere on the top of the house at the university or secondary school?
So we really thought carefully about that, and we believe, as you mentioned, you pointed, first of all, the importance of using each subject to infuse the pedagogies of peace and cross-cultural and intercultural communication. So this is what we envision will happen, but it takes time, as you mentioned, and we absolutely recognize the potential of using even other faculties. You mentioned civil engineering, but also medicine, robotics, IT studies. I mean, each and every single discipline could be sensitized with the skills and knowledge in this particular field. And the other question, in terms of introducing this from a very early stage on, this is absolutely a must. And in the current project we are doing with UNESCO, we're actually proposing 4 working groups, one of which will actually tackle the curriculum for pre-primary. So this is the kindergarten. And we want to do it for different levels. I mentioned pre-primary, primary, secondary, and university. We'll have different working groups proposing the conceptual framework for peace education for teachers to prepare them, and also what knowledge, values, skills, attitudes they will develop among kids of all ages. So absolutely, yes, this is the foundational framework. In starting very early is really important, and working with preschool teachers also to know how to translate some of these elements and some of these values into kindergarten and already at that level of education and learning. So we do hope that in 2 years, we will be able to present what we have come up with, what we have designed. I'm sorry, it's getting dark here. I didn't turn my lights on. I don't know if you can see me. So we definitely would like in 2 years to be able to propose and to present. Hopefully we can have another discussion when we complete the project, where we will actually present different curriculum frameworks, including in preschool education, just as a starting point. So we'll see what happens. We intend to work with teacher educators, university teachers, but also those who are practitioners. So those who work directly with children in all these different environments, because they are really in direct communication with children of all ages.
Oh, thanks.
Let me just turn the light on, because I think it's getting dark. Just a second.
Okay. Just one sentence, Kostas, when
Okay.
Larisa is back. Great. I agree with you. I'm very curious what will come out and how all this will going.
Great.
And I just simply put it into the chat, my email address. I would like to stay with you in the contact. Nevertheless, one of my first assistants is a little girl that time that she came as refugee to Slovenia. And she was also somebody who learned us some of points of view of that history and all of those things. So I would like to stay in the contact with you.
Absolutely.
I'm very curious, and if there is anything that could be helpful for you, I'm prepared to cooperate.
Great.
Besides electrical engineering, I'm teaching international and intercultural communication for
Beautiful.
our media communication students. Thank you,
Great.
Larisa, once
So
again.
this is a very good connection, because this is also my course in interculturalism. So that's wonderful. I'll email to you. And we
Please.
also collaborate with University in Ljubljana with education school. So we published one paper I can share with you also recently with the University in Ljubljana. So we do have some connections with Slovenia.
It'll be my pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Tatiana.
Okay,
You're
dobro.
welcome.
This is the
Dobro.
that I know.
Great.
So I would like to thank you, Larisa, honestly, as, a project, impact project, we would like also to collaborate with you to organize some virtual exchanges to share with our teachers about your policies. We involve, or this is the mission of the project, to involve and communicate between Israelis and, Arabs and all the kind of ethnic, cultural groups that they are involved. And also, this kind of series of talks, if we can organize them through your center, I can organize them for you in order to integrate our efforts and become not individual, units, but to integrate. It's, I'm going to write you an email in order.
That's great. Let's keep, this is the start. Yes, let's keep in touch.
Yes. All right. So that's
Great.
it. Today.
Great. Thank you, everyone. Thank you for your interest in this topic. We'll keep in touch.
And also Piotr.
Thank you.
He speaks, Serbian. Yeah.
Oh, really?
Razumiem. I understand. No?
Razumiem.
I know other things from basketball, but I cannot say them. All right.
Kostas, do you know this proverb? It is going in that way that we have to talk. I will use the old word Serbo-Croatian, that the old world can understand you.
I know.
No, lingua franca.
All right. Enjoy.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Thank
Good
you.
night. Have a great weekend.
Share with us the presentation in order to upload.
Yes, I will. I'll share the slides by email. Don't worry. Thank you
Bye.
so much.
Bye.
Thank you very much.
Bye.
Thank you. Thank you very much.